Hey y'all, welcome into a Saints special edition live chat. We have schedule release Wednesday. I almost forgot the day of the week, but I caught it just in time. I'm here. My name is Jeff Nowak, NOLA.com's digital sports producer. I'm here with Luke Johnson, one of our Saints beat writers, and Rod Walker, messing with his camera, but we promise he's there. How y'all doing today?
Good.
I'm doing great.
It's a wild day, right?
Yeah.
We spent all morning thinking, how long is it going to take for every game to leak? And they all leaked by noon, which I feel like saved us a lot of torment and trying to gradually pretend we believed the schedule as it came out throughout the day. We can go through them, the game by game in a bit, but I'll start with you, Luke. You know, the schedule came out, the Saints released it about 6:45, about 15 minutes ago. What was your kind of biggest takeaway from what you saw just off the jump?
Well, I think the biggest thing that just should jump out to anybody who's looking at the Saints in the post-Drew Brees era, the first schedule that comes out, they have 5 primetime games. I think that shows that the Saints are still a draw, even if Drew Brees is not here. I guess obviously this year is going to show us whether that's going to last, but I think that was the really most intriguing thing to me. You've got 2 Monday night games, Sunday night game, and 2 Thursday night games.
One of them being Thanksgiving.
Being Thanksgiving. So I think that's really good for the Saints as a brand. And then outside of that, the thing that really jumped out to me is you're looking at 4 of the first 6 games are going to be on the road, which ought to be a really, really interesting start out of the gates for a team that's going to be working some new pieces in. And I think that to me looks like a really tough stretch, the team's notwithstanding. So I think those are the 2 things that really jumped out to me right away.
How about you, Rod?
Yeah, for me, I was going to say the same thing as far as the primetime games. The Saints have, as far as TV ratings, they always do really well. I think the NFL has taken, they realize that, and Saints are, as a result of that, Saints on primetime. For me, I think the schedule, because before the schedule even came out, and I won't go too much into my predictions right now, but I thought this was a team that could, win 10 or 11 games. And then when the schedule comes out and I see the front part of the schedule, I think that works really well for this team, just because, obviously they're breaking in a new quarterback. So I think the front end of that schedule, those first, 5 games, I think they're winnable games. Obviously the Packers game, which I guess we'll talk about here shortly, but the Packers game, just as a season opener, and we don't even know if Aaron Rodgers is going to be playing with them or not. But I look at those first 5 games and think that those are games that the Saints could possibly be 5-0 going into that bye. But it obviously depends on how well whichever quarterback wins that job plays, to start the season.
Yeah, Rod, you mentioned the bye. They have a Week 6 bye, which, as you had requested of the NFL, I think they may have seen and heeded your call for a early bye week so we could get to Jazz Fest, because the Week 6 bye falls in line with the second weekend of Jazz Fest. So for a music fan, that's good. For a team that is playing the first ever 17-game schedule in NFL history, to have a Week 6 bye, that means that, and this is what kind of stood out to me as it kind of developed, they will have 12 games in as many weeks to close out the season, 2 of those being Thursday games from, I have it here. Okay, they have a stretch of 3 games in 12 days across Thanksgiving and then the Thursday game after that with the Cowboys. So if they don't win the top seed in the NFC, in order to get to the Super Bowl, they would have to play 15 games in 15 weeks. That's a lot. That's going to test any team's health. And we'll see. They dealt with a ton of injuries last year. Maybe that was a one-year thing, but the NFL didn't do them any favors with the rest. What are your kind of takeaways on that?
No, I agree with you. I can't remember when the bye fell last season. One of you all may have it with you, but yeah, 12 games in a row that's a lot, and it's tough. And selfishly, I'm glad to see it, because I was really wanting. I missed Jazz Fest in the spring, and we didn't get one last year. So selfishly, I'm glad to see it. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a tough stretch for that team with some, some road games that have them going all across the country. So it's a tough stretch. Those final 12 weeks.
Bye was Week 6 last year, by the way.
Okay.
I think to Jeff's point, I do think that that where the bye falls is important. You don't want it to be too early. You don't want it to be too late. And they are going to have a pretty brutal stretch here. And you're also looking at a team that, it's going to be, I think it's going to be hard for them to get like the top seed in the NFC. So if they make it to the playoffs and they're looking at playing, with 13 straight games or 14 straight games. It's going to be tough, but I do think that every year it always depends on what the situation is at that moment. The bye this year, it seemed like the timing was pretty good for him with getting some guys back from injuries. So, it's not ideal. I don't think if you're looking at a perfect world scenario, but it's always dependent on what happens in the season.
On the flip side of that, you go back to last year. I think Tampa Bay's bye was maybe December the first or second. It was really late. Yeah, I mean they had like 4 games after the bye. So I mean, it works both ways sometimes. But ideally, I think Sean Payton or some of the players have said it before. They prefer the bye to be, you right in the middle of the season is ideal. But it just doesn't work like that. Everybody can't have a bye after week 8. So.
Nope, and everyone's playing that extra game, so that's not anything that the Saints can complain about. I think this year will be interesting. More, last year they had a lot of injuries. This year they, who knows how that will develop. You can't predict injuries, but I think they were able to overcome a lot of those with the depth that they had last year, and that might not necessarily be the case at a lot of positions. They had to make all these cost-cutting measures to get under the cap, and that's just you're sacrificing a lot of depth there, and it'll be interesting to see how that develops. Why don't we just start at the top? What did y'all think about Packers week 1? I know a popular take was, it was one of mine, is Bucs Saints probably was going to be that, and it is not. You have Dallas going into Tampa for that Thursday kickoff. Saints host the Packers. We have no idea who either quarterback will be in that matchup at this point. What do y'all think on that one?
I know for me, as far as the season opener, I wrote a column today about prediction. I thought the Bucs and Cowboys, or the Bucs and the Bills, would be the season opener. I just thought it was a bigger draw with Drew not being here. I just, I thought that's what I thought that's the direction the NFL would go based on the teams that were on the Buccaneers' schedule for hosting games. As far as Green Bay, I mean, when I was doing my predictions, that was the first game of the season was probably my hardest one, just because of all the uncertainty with that game. I mean, we don't know who's going to be quarterback for either team, as you said. And, Green Bay signing Blake Bortles today. So that really muddied things up even more. So, I think if Aaron Rodgers is playing in that game, it's obviously a much better game. If he's not playing, I think it bodes well for the Saints.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes the Green Bay game one of the more interesting ones in the calendar, at least right now. Who knows what's going to happen between now and September 12th, but I mean, there's absolutely no certainty with what's going to happen with Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers, Jason. I almost did what Drew Brees just did there. Jameis Williams or Taysom Hill. So, and my dogs are back.
Which one's that? Is that Oscar?
Yeah, it's Oscar.
He's
been quiet and sleeping all day, and now that I'm on the video, he's deciding to join us.
It's like y'all having a live chat. I'm involved. All right, I'm testing something on the fly here. Here's the schedule. Here's a phone wallpaper size graphic of the Saints schedule that I flash up, so people have some idea of what we're talking about. I think that'll be helpful. So as we said before, you open up with the Packers, then you go on the road 2 games, Panthers, Patriots. I think this season is going to be interesting because a lot of it's going to be based on, is the NFC East and the AFC East still as bad as we remember it to be? Because if it is, then this season, the Saints may have lucked out. If you see some rebirth from teams like the Patriots, the Cowboys, the Giants, it could become a lot more difficult in this opening stretch. I think you're going to see that because you have, Panthers, Patriots, Giants, Washington. I'm particularly interested in that Giants matchup because if y'all remember, the last time the Giants came and played in the Superdome, it was insanity from start to finish. I want to say the score was 51-49, 51-48. The Saints won on a last-second field goal. Do you think there's going to be 100 points scored in that matchup this year?
I'm going to say no.
I say no, too, because I think the Saints' defense is going to still be really good this year, especially if they can. A lot of that depends on who that cornerback is they bring in, but I don't think it'll be high scoring like that.
And I think the Giants averaged like 18 points a game last year, so we'll see how it goes. So, Luke, if you had to pick, one a game out of this schedule other than the Packers that, you are very much looking forward to, what would it be and why?
Okay, do we want to go with personal reasons or do we want to go for football reasons here?
Whatever feels right for you.
Because, I'm telling you right now that as soon as I saw that Patriots game on the schedule, I was just like, all right, let's see when the Red Sox are playing, if they're at home. If they are playing at home, and they're playing the New York Yankees that weekend. So I'm pretty pumped for that personally. I know probably people here don't really care about that. So as far as from a football standpoint, I'm really interested to see them play the Bucs again, just after the way last year went, with the obvious storylines with Jameis potentially being the Saints quarterback. I think that first Bucs matchup, we should have a pretty good idea with what the Saints team is by that point. And we should have a good idea of whether the Bucs are going to be a team that's in line to defend its title. I think that's a really exciting game from a football standpoint. But I'm really hoping to see a Red Sox-Yankees game too. That'd be great.
You ever been to Fenway?
I have not. I'm actually planning to go there maybe next month. So maybe I can get 2 trips in 1 year. That'd be great.
It's a good time. That wall is as big as advertised.
Looking forward to it.
All right, Rod, what about you?
Yeah, for me, I say the Buccaneers, first of all, just because of that was a team that they got better and better as the season went along last year. So I'm just really curious to see how they'll start this 2021 season. But outside of that game, I think the Dallas Cowboys game, I think that's a team that's, outside of the Atlanta Falcons, I say Saints fans probably hate Cowboys fans more than they hate anybody else in the league, and that's including the Buccaneers and the Carolina Panthers. So I think the Cowboys game, it's a primetime game on a Thursday night. Dak Prescott will, he's back now, and that offense was really good last year. The defense was terrible, which is why they drafted – they used 6 of their first draft picks to pick defensive players. But I just think it'll be a fun game, and especially if both teams are doing well. And I think the Cowboys will be much improved from, what they were last year. And again, with Dak Prescott, the offense is really dangerous and pretty fun to watch. So that's the game that, I'll definitely be looking out for.
And the Dome is going to be rocking for that too. Prime time, Cowboys in the house. They get insane for that. And I can't wait. I cannot wait to be back in that environment.
Right, and we still don't know what that's going to look like, but you have to imagine there's going to be last year what we had 5,000 for later in the season. Even if there is a reduced capacity of some kind, you have to imagine it's going to be significantly higher, and it's going to be nice to see people back in that building. It's a bummer that they weren't able to get back in for Breeze's final game or any of them, but it's going to be nice to see that building loud.
And not just the building, Jeff, also outside the building.
Right.
Cowboys fans, they travel really well, and hopefully the city is back to normal by then. And the streets of New Orleans will just be insane that whole weekend with Saints and Cowboys fans all in town.
Yeah, and so if I'm going to take a cop out here on the schedule and say, it's funny because everyone likes to slam on the NFC East, and it's fair because they've been really bad. But what happens when you're really bad is you get really high draft picks and you get to draft really exciting players. And these teams have really exciting players on them. They just haven't been able to figure it out. With Washington, you have to deal with Chase Young, who was just a wrecking ball last season. You get Saquon Barkley with the Giants. You get Devontae Smith with the Eagles. These are just an absolute show of players. And you're going to see them all week to week to week. And then you have the Panthers just sitting there in week 2 with Sam Darnold and Terrace Marshall and J.C. Horn. This is a really exciting lineup of teams, in my opinion.
And look, don't forget week 2 of the preseason. We could see Trevor Lawrence, right? So I might actually be a little bit excited about a preseason game.
Yeah, last year you had all the MVPs. You had Aaron Rodgers, Pat Mahomes. Well, you still have Aaron Rodgers. You had Pat Mahomes and Tom Brady twice. This year you have the young guns.
And we didn't talk about the Buffalo game, but that's another game that I think. You assume Buffalo's going to be really good again. They got to the AFC Championship last year, and Josh Allen had a really good year at quarterback. So that's another game that I'm looking forward to, and it's on Thanksgiving. So everybody will be watching that one for sure.
What is y'all's opinion on that Buffalo game? It seemed like an interesting choice to put on Thanksgiving. Buffalo's not a traditional Thanksgiving team. The Saints have kind of become a Thanksgiving team over the last few years, but it's been against the Falcons. Were y'all expecting a Thanksgiving game in this schedule?
I mean, after the last couple of years, why wouldn't you expect it, right? Like they're always playing on some sort of holiday, whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas. I'm just kind of thinking this is part of the thing now. And I think Buffalo makes sense here because they're an up and coming team. You're getting them to come into a great environment and against a team that's been one of the best teams in the NFL the last 5 or 6 years. So I think it makes sense to me.
I think that's actually one of the tougher games on the schedule just because of that quick turnaround. I mean, you got a road trip to Philly, and you got to come back and 4 days later you're playing one of the better teams in the NFL. So I think that's going to be a really tough stretch for this team.
Yep, and Josh Allen can throw the ball really far. That's my breakdown of Josh Allen at this point. It's just a cannon. Stefan Diggs is still there to twist the knife. It's going to be a good one. Rod, we can kind of get into your predictions now. I know you had the Saints finishing 11-5, but I was interested to see how you
11-6.
11-6. I saw you write it. And I read it like 7 times thinking like, this is not a football number. What is happening?
It was really weird doing that because every time you do a schedule, I mean, we've gotten so accustomed to saying 12-4, those numbers that add up to 16. So it was definitely different. And that's about the record I had them at even before the schedule came out. But again, when I saw those first few games, I just thought those were some really winnable games. I have them starting 5-0, which, again, if Aaron Rodgers is playing with Green Bay, which I'm sort of thinking he's not going to be, I mean, I could easily flip that to 4-1, but I think those first 5 games are really winnable. And again, that depends on how well whoever the quarterback is for the Saints plays. Because, I mean, if Jameis or Taysom come out and they really struggle, that 5-0 that I'm saying could very easily turn into 2-3 or 3-2 or something like that. So I think getting through that first 5 games is going to be really important for how well this team does. And then you got that stretch in the middle that we just talked about at Tennessee, at Philly, short turnaround against the Bills, and then the Cowboys the next week. I mean, I think that stretch could really determine a lot about this season as well. But I do have this team, like I said, finishing 11-6, and I think I think they're a wild card team. I picked the Buccaneers to actually win the division. I actually picked the Buccaneers to sweep the Saints in the regular season like the Saints swept them last year. I just think they're going to be really good this year. And I think the Falcons are going to be improved as well.
Yeah, I saw you had the Falcons finally breaking the schneid in week 18. I can't get used to saying that. Do you really believe that's going to happen? Because it doesn't feel like it. What has changed about the Falcons that you're more bullish on them this season?
I guess first of all, I was really high on Kyle Pitts. I think he's really good, and I just think there's a team. They had some injuries. Julio didn't play a lot, and I just think, and again, this could very well have a lot to do with who the Saints find to play cornerback. But I just think the Falcons are a team that can be dangerous. They typically play the Saints. At least one of the games is typically going to be close anyway, and I think they have a good shot at that one.
I agree with Rod. I think they're going to be really good, actually. And I think they've been a lot better than their records said the last couple of years. They were really snake bit. They cleared house with the coaching staff and the front office. They've got obviously a really smart guy there in Terry Fontenot, who we know well. I think they're on the up if they can figure out their salary cap problems, but they've got some really good pieces and they've been pretty solid despite their record. So I think they could bounce back. I think they're going to be pretty tough. I don't know if I put them above the Saints right now, but the division's definitely getting tougher.
Yeah, their issue has never been lack of talent. That's always been my thing. People like to troll the Falcons, and I think it's fair to an extent. But that is a talented football team, and there's a reason the coach gets fired, and it's not because they're losing with a like a substandard roster. They're losing with a roster that should be competitive. And Dan Quinn finally got showed the door. Thomas Dimitroff finally got showed the door. It'll be interesting to see how things change. I think the Panthers are another really interesting team. This is a team that played without Christian McCaffrey for the majority of last year. They're on their second quarterback or the third quarterback in 3 years. What are your expectations for those games? We get a really early look at the Panthers this season, whereas last year we had to wait until week 7, I think, before we had that first matchup here.
I had the Saints sweeping the Panthers. They've swept them, I don't know how many years in a row. I got it in the story, but the last time the Panthers beat the Saints was that regular season finale a few years back when the Saints were resting starters. They'd already locked up their spot in the playoffs, and I don't know if the Panthers – I just don't think they have enough yet to beat the Saints, and I got the Saints beating them, both times this season. I got one game close and one game sort of lopsided, which is kind of how it's been the past couple of years.
Well, maybe now that they'll incorporate some red zone and 2-minute into their practices, and it'll be great. So.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of the strangest things I've heard in quite some time.
Look, congrats to Teddy for totally changing the course of schedule day for a little bit. That was great.
Yeah, if you don't know that reference, Teddy went on a podcast with Patrick Peterson and I'm blanking, Bryant.
Brian McFadden.
Bryant McFadden.
And Bridgewater we were talking about.
I'm sorry?
I'm just saying it was Teddy Bridgewater that we're talking about.
Right. And Teddy told them that the Panthers did not practice 2-minute drills or red zone offense, which kind of really stands out when you consider they lost to the Saints, to the Chiefs, and to the Vikings while attempting a 55, 62, and 67-yard field goal in the final 2 minutes of each game. Maybe a couple more 2-minute reps might have helped them get a little bit closer. But again, we're talking about a team that, like I said, they have been bad, and so they have been able to build assets. They drafted J.C. Horn, which Sean Payton identified as one of the players that he was looking at corner. If they were able to trade into the top 10, they were not. They drafted Terrace Marshall, another player that apparently they got a tip that the Saints were looking to take him at 60, so they changed course and took him at 59. So this is a team that has talent, and it's just a matter of putting it together with Sam Darnold at quarterback. I know, Rod, you have them at 11-6. I'm a lot less bullish on that record. I think that if they don't get out to a good start, this season could hit the rocks a little bit. What were you in the back half of the schedule? What do you see with that last 8 games or so? Because I almost feel like that closing stretch is actually cleaner than the opening stretch, where you have a lot of teams you don't really know about. The Jets, the Bucs, who you'll be playing for the second time, and the Saints have proven they don't have too much of an issue going into Raymond James. You have Miami, which is an interesting matchup too. What are your expectations for the back end of the schedule? Sorry, I can't talk.
You want me to go first, Luke, or you? The back end, I think. Again, I'm looking at the schedule now. I mean, I think the Jets is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can see this team easily going, 4-1 on the back end. I think the Bucs game or the Falcons game, either one of those could be, losses. But hopefully the Saints don't lose both of those games. But that is 2 road trips to 2 division teams, and obviously the Falcons games it'll just come down to. Are they playing for anything, or are the Saints playing for anything? I mean, that's the last game, so you just never know. But I think the Bucs game is the one that will, playing Tampa Bay on the road that late in the season. I mean, that depending on how the Saints do it at that front stretch. I mean, that Bucs game could be for the division title. So I like the back end of the schedule. I just think that front end is just the most important part of this schedule because they do need to come out playing really well. Because if they don't, it could turn really quick.
Yeah, I think that back end of the schedule sets up really nicely for them. But I just think getting there is going to be so interesting. There's this Saints season. There's so much like unknown going into it. I feel like it can go one way or another for this team. And I think the one way is, maybe something up as high as like the 2 or 3 seed. I think they can win the division because I think they still have a lot of really, really good pieces, but I think a lot needs to go right. And the other way, you can see, like, I really do think that this team has a chance to kind of fall back into the middle of the pack, just because of all the depth they lost this offseason. They got to show us that the players they're counting on to fill some of those spots that have been held by established players are good enough to fill those spots. And until that happens, I think there's just going to be a pretty high level of uncertainty about this team. That's okay. It's really hard to put a roster together like they had the last 3 years, that you just knew going into the season these guys are going to be in the hunt for the Super Bowl. It's really, really hard to do that with the salary cap being what it is, with just player turnover, with Drew Brees retiring. I think it's okay that we have like a prove-it season on our hands here in New Orleans.
It's definitely the most uncertain I've been in the past couple of years. I mean, for the past few years, we've been saying Super Bowl or bust pretty much, and anything less than that means this team sort of underachieved, I guess. And so this year, I don't know what underachievement is for this team. I just think we need to, again, it's going to come down to this quarterback play for me. I just think none of us know how good Jameis or Taysom will be as a starter. And until we know that, we can't really – it's going to be really hard to make any predictions. But I do think that those first few games, are games that sets them up to do well.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think Beatrice's comment here is kind of poignant because she may be ready with or without Drew. I am not, because I have no idea what to expect with or without Drew. And that's the luxury that, covering the Saints or being a Saints fan or watching the Saints has been for the last 14 years. Most teams do not get to go that long without a question of who your quarterback is going to be. The Saints have that this year. And, if they strike gold and Jameis, shows the growth that they're hoping he does from his time in Tampa to the 2021 season, and or Taysom takes that job and really thrives, then that's fantastic. But the fact is you don't know, and you just kind of have to look at it. One thing before we go, Luke, we got Rod's prediction. Oh, you just told me the dogs are going crazy.
I think we're good. I think they wore themselves out, hopefully.
All right. Well, worst case, we'll get their record prediction. But we got Rod's 11-6. What would your record prediction be? Shot out of a cannon, putting you on the spot for the 2021 17-game NFL season.
Yeah, I think 11-6, 10-7. I think that makes sense to me. And again, I think the range for this team is something in the 8-9 to probably 12-5 range. I think their floor is pretty high because they have a pretty stacked roster still at the top end. But I think the bottom end of their roster is just a little bit thinner than it was. So I'll go with I think 11-6 is pretty good. Like I don't like to just say the same thing Rod does here, but I think he's pretty spot on with that.
Yeah, and I was spot on last year, by the way, Jeff. I said 12-4, and they went 12-4.
We should point that out. Rod's picks were literally perfect. Well, I think you got a couple of the games switched, but you had the record correct. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I had them losing to. I didn't have them losing to the Raiders.
No, not many people.
Right.
You were not alone, but you had 12-4 on the button, and you got most of it. Yeah, I think there was only one game, 2 games, 1 win, 1 loss that were flipped. Yeah. Because I remember when we went back through it, I was like, damn, this is pretty much spot on. So there you have it. Rod's picks are going to be correct. If you want to check any of that out, head over to NOLA.com /sports/Saints. We got the dog barking again, but I think you heard it. And we got Rod's picks. We have our another beat writer, Amy Just, did a whole breakdown of the schedule. As you can see, we have this conveniently cell phone-sized pocket schedule that you can throw on your lock screen so you don't forget when the games are, which I always find very helpful, and a whole lot more coverage. Make sure to check that out over at NOLA.com. Again, I'm here with Rod Walker, our sports columnist, our Saints beat writer, Luke Johnson. Is there anything else y'all wanted to hit on before we got out of here?
I haven't seen the rest of the schedule, so I don't know.
The
I haven't
rest of
seen
the
the
schedule?
I mean, like other teams or anything.
Oh. I thought you meant
And I
like the
totally
preseason.
ignored the preseason schedule. Like I didn't even realize that was out there. So
it's like the first time since I've been covering this team, I'm like excited about going to a preseason game.
Yeah, one thing we can note, so 17-game schedule, the start of the season is the same as it would normally be. There is one fewer preseason game. So there's 3 preseason games and then an open week before the start of the season. So because the CBA only allots 20 games that you can play in any season, they had to cut one of the preseason games out, and they at least left that week open. So it's a little bit more kind of rest lead up to the game. You know, I don't know how much rest you need coming out of the preseason, but it is there. And then the playoffs are going to get pushed back a week from where they normally would be. And that's where you make up that extra week 18. But it's going every time we get to like this time of year, and it reminds me how much I miss football. So I think it's going to be a very interesting season as kind of things get back rolling. Hopefully we won't have as many COVID pauses or any for that matter as we go forward. But that's it. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for popping in, for leaving a comment. Make sure to head over to NOLA.com. Thanks, Rod and Luke, for joining, and we'll see you next time.